I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education for the School District of Baraboo to order for Monday, December the 10th, 2012 with roll call. Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. McNevin.
Here.
Mr. Meering.
Here.
Mr. Mortimer.
Here.
Ms. Riley.
Here.
Mr. Vidro.
Here.
And Vodak here. Let's continue with the pledge, which is behind the counter. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would entertain a motion that it be resolved the Board of Education approve the minutes of the November 26, 2012 meeting as printed. So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Meering. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes approved and carried. Brings us to correspondence, of which I have none. Any other board members with correspondence? Hearing none, administrative correspondence? Hearing none, public viewpoints? Is there anybody here for public viewpoints tonight? Any public viewpoints? Any public viewpoints? Hearing none, brings us on to what is typically the highlight of our meeting, and I'm sure it will be again tonight, which is the staff and student recognition portion. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Peterson, who's the principal at North Freedom.
As part of our community outreach goal this year, North Freedom committed to offering a fundraiser that would, with proceeds that would go to local entities. The fundraiser this year consisted of a week-long food drive and a Friday afternoon fun run. Leah Ronell, PE teacher at North Freedom, and Wes was the spearheader of this. And we have Alexis and Autumn Winnicky, who were very active participants in the process. So they're both going to give you a little bit more of their perspective on this event.
The kids started training at the beginning of October, and they trained for an entire month. And they have physical education 3 times a week, so we started out running 3 minutes, and every day we increased it by 1 minute, so we were running a lot. And we have a very lovely prairie in the back of the school, so we got to utilize that, which was really nice instead of running multiple laps inside in the gym. So kids really enjoyed it. They set goals and they filled out goal forms. If they met their goal, the parent group agreed to give $5 to the North Freedom Fire Department for each student that met their goal. And so we ended up raising $600 for the fire department, and then the food drive raised over 400 pounds of food. So that was really nice. And with the fire that happened out at the old school in North Freedom, we were able to take a little bit of that food and give it to the families who had been living there. And actually, the girl's mom was nice enough to make a contact for us and get that food to those families, so I know they really appreciated it. You guys want to go?
First, we would like to thank you for this special honor. It was really fun doing this fun run, knowing that we were helping others. We wanted to help the North Freedom Fire Department because they are always volunteering their time helping others. We also wanted to help the North Freedom Fire victims because they lost almost everything they own. We like living in a small community where everyone knows each other and are willing to help each other. So thank you once again.
And Leah Brownell, in addition to organizing this event, she also serves on both of our district wellness committees, the one for staff as well as the one for our students. And she's also a member of the PBIS team. And she's only been here, this is your second year? Mm-hmm. Second year. So we want to thank you and acknowledge the work. Here's a certificate of appreciation from the school board, and thank you very much. For you too, and what grade are you in? Third grade. So, whoa, you got a lot of years with us yet. We're looking forward to all the other great things we're going to do. So we have an Honor for Excellence medallion, T-Bird colors, so you're going to be able to keep that for many years. We're very proud of the work that you've done and helping people in your community and being a good role model for other students. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have on our agenda as continuous school improvement, the professional development PLCs. And Jackie, Jory, and Brian, you're up.
Hello, my name, is this even working?
It's for recording.
It's for recording, okay. That's good. You need me up there?
Well, you want us to hear you.
Well, yeah, this gets, you know, so this is on cable. This might be my big break. Not that I want to leave. My name is Brian Mattoon, and I am a middle school teacher. I teach 8th grade, and this year I am teaching both science and math.
I'm Jory Ruff, K-5 ELL specialist, work mostly at ABE and facilitate conversations at Belk and 4K, and also work a little bit at West School.
And I'm Jackie Amott. I am the secondary literacy coach. I work with the middle school and the high school, and I currently teach Read 180.
Last year, the three of us were part of the district's professional development planning committee. There were some more members. It wasn't just Jackie, Brian, and I making all the decisions. And Lori really spearheaded that committee to focus on PLC and the professional development plan for our district. And actually that professional development plan was for 3 years. So that will continue 2 years after the school year is finished. And we really wanted to have a plan that teachers, the community, administrators could follow, and that really was meaningful for the staff and for the students, especially of the Baraboo School District. We've been very fortunate to use this time to collaborate with one another. First and third Wednesdays especially are set aside for teams to plan our intervention times. And personally, I can say that that is probably one of my favorite parts of the day, is getting to work with small groups of students, not just ELL students, but all students, and really focusing on what they need. And in some schools we call that win time, which just means what I need. And you should see the hallways. It's a really great time of the day. There's a lot of movement, it's busy, it's very positive, and the kids, I feel, really enjoy it. And just a personal note, I've been working with some kindergarten students, and some of my kids didn't know letters coming in, and I've been working with them for 3 to 4 weeks on an intervention, research-based intervention, and they have come such a long way. And one student knows all of his letters, and now we're working on letter sounds. So I've seen a lot of growth with our students, and it's a fun time for me, but also we're really focused on what those kids need at that time. So we're using data. We're also using professional development to ensure high quality instruction. We have times during the month where teachers can choose some different professional development that they want to go to, whether we're bringing in outside trainers into the district or if we're utilizing staff within the district to give some professional development to our staff members. And it's really, I've heard really positive comments about our PLC's times this year, so I think it's something that this plan has really been a positive thing for the district.
I think I'm just going to add a little bit to that, and then I'll move on to the next section of what we'd like to talk to you about. One of the things that we've really noticed at the secondary levels is just the amount of collaboration that's able to take place with secondary teachers compared to how things were in the past. Without this structured time, a lot of teachers were really working in silos and not able to collaborate on how students were doing, student data, what areas of their content or their coursework maybe they needed to tweak to better meet the needs of all students. So it really, really has opened up the lines of communication for teachers, and the amount of collaboration has been amazing for us, especially at the secondary level. I've really noticed a difference. Of course, that's where I am, so I'm sure it's happening everywhere. So I'm just going to highlight a little bit about our process on this committee. We really wanted to start with looking at the district's goals and strategic plan and the highlights of what we want to do as a whole, as a district and in the community, how we can tie everything together and really work together as a staff, with parents, with all of you, with administrators. So we really looked at the goals and initiatives that we had as a district first. And this committee was made up from participants from all of the different buildings. We had administrators on the committee. We had a really nice, diverse group of people that could speak to what the needs really were in each building and each area. So we looked at all of the initiatives that we had as a district as a starting point, and then we talked about ways that we could really support those initiatives and support the development of SMART goals in buildings, so that we weren't just adding another type of initiative, but we were really kind of tying everything together for everybody that works with the district. So we wanted to be able to support building level goals and the development and success of reaching those goals. And we also wanted to really look at student data and make sure that everything that we were doing and looking at doing was going to be effective in improving student achievement. So we looked at results from WKCE, we looked at MAP, or Measures of Academic Progress data, and really tried to see where the gaps were and where we needed to focus with this plan, this professional development plan, and our goals. We prioritized our initiatives based on that data that we looked at, and we came up with a very high priority for assessment literacy and data-driven decision making. So really wanting to focus and emphasize how important using data to drive all of our decisions would be across the district. And then getting training to teachers so that everyone knows how to really dive into data and look at what it's telling us, how we can plan instruction according to that data, and how we can meet the needs of all students in our buildings. So we really talked about that. We talked about ways that we could do coaching in the area of data assessment, and Lori went around and did some wonderful professional development in buildings with teachers to get everybody started and really thinking about how to look at data, especially on those Wednesday, first and third Wednesdays during intervention time. Our second priority was literacy. That was something that we thought was high priority, both because of student data that we had looked at and also because of the changes that are coming up with the balanced assessment and the types of questions and testing that students are going to be dealing with in the very near future. Literacy is a really essential skill. So we really felt that we need to ramp up our instruction in the areas of literacy, especially when it gets to the secondary level in the content areas or across the content areas. Another great need that we talked about was an increase in informational text and having students able to read and decipher informational text. So that's a shift that we're talking about and that we included when we were looking at planning our professional development.
Jackie, when you
Yes.
say we're shifting to informational text, what were we shifting from?
Well, not shifting to solely informational text, but just increasing the amount of informational text students are reading across all grade levels and content areas.
So more.
More, because historically, there has been more of an emphasis on fiction, especially in language arts classes.
Okay.
And so we're looking to really balance that and increase the informational text.
In all subject areas?
In all subject areas.
Okay.
Yep. We also looked at math data and talked about how we could address some of the needs that students and teachers might need in the area of math. So that was our next priority. Then the next one that we had on our list was differentiation and inclusive practices. And it was hard as a committee to prioritize these because they're all so important. but we really saw differentiation as a huge need in our district. We have teachers who are doing a great job of differentiating, but again, we're trying to do the best we can for all students in every classroom. So differentiation is extremely important to be able to meet those needs, and we thought we needed to provide more opportunities for teachers to learn how to differentiate in a classroom of 30 students and make sure that everyone's needs are being met. So again, we have tried to work in some opportunities for coaching in that area. We have purchased resources, professional resources that teachers can check out, and we've also established some professional development opportunities in the area of differentiation and inclusive practices. The next initiative is grading, and we have built in at the district and building levels lots of discussion about grading practices, and also opportunities for staff to collaborate and try some different things with their grading practices, as well as some book studies. We wanted to make sure on our committee that we built in some time for those discussions and that research to continue as we look at how to best meet the needs of our students and their parents in the area of grading. The next initiative that we talked about was the PBIS system, or Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. And we, again, wanted to just build in time where teachers could collaborate, talk about how that's going, set goals by building level to make sure that that initiative is in place and we're moving forward with it. And we've had some great successes already with PBIS. Finally, not last on this list because it's not extremely important, but we have 21st century learning and instructional technology. And we wanted to make sure to address that, of course, because we are preparing students for a world that is very different and changing every day than maybe what we came out into when we graduated from high school. So we've had lots of opportunities, both in what we call small group PD or buffet sessions where teachers could sign up and either work with other teachers who have been trying some innovative things with technology, or again working with outside consultants or trainers in the area of technology. We've had some great opportunities for teachers to work with coaches or together and collaborate in the area of technology. And I know that we have also purchased some great resources, and teachers are trying a lot of great things. And we'll talk later about some other opportunities for professional development in the area of technology. Do you guys want to add anything from that section? Okay.
Jackie,
question?
I just wanted to make sure that I reinforce something that you said.
Mm-hmm.
In a classroom of 30 students with a single teacher and hopefully an aide, we are attempting to differentiate for each student where they are, which is a completely different frame of reference to having 30 students essentially focusing on the same concept, whether or not they understand it or not, with a teacher at the head of the class, if you will. And the challenge of that differentiation on the shoulders of our teachers needs to be understood by our community, that we as a school district and our teachers and our administrators have undertaken a Herculean task. This is a totally different structure and a way of approaching education. And any parent or any critic of what we are attempting to do should plan to walk in the shoes of one of our teachers for at least a day to understand the lay of the land and the reality of the challenges of what attempting to differentiate for 30 students really means. And I want to, as a member of the school board and as a parent of two, I want, especially after our most recent teacher-parent conferences, to commend all of you for the fine work that you are doing to try to raise every child and give every opportunity there is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, board members, if you do have any further questions that you come up with, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to address them in the future. I'm sure we'll talk about the topic again. So thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Oh, we're not
No,
done.
we're not done.
Please, we were going to say this at the beginning.
Yep.
Please hold your questions until the end because they may be addressed. And the purpose
sorry.
of tonight is to really address these cohorts of teachers who are meeting on the 4th PLC of each month. And we're going to be bringing staff forward to the board to talk about what happens on the other PLC dates. But really the primary focus of tonight is to tell you and inform you more what happens on that 4th Wednesday of each month. Thank you.
Okay, so, again, wishful thinking that we were done, but.
Only for you.
I've got lots of time. So, as Jackie was talking, there's 7 key initiatives that we are undertaking, and all of us were very concerned with having 7 of them. Is it too much for the teachers to handle? But we thought, when we looked at the list, there's really nothing we can take off the list. All of these are essential with what we are currently striving to do to meet the needs of the individual student. So that comes to our PLC structure, and I believe you guys all have the map right here. You guys want to take a look at this? I just want to briefly go through these Wednesdays with you before we begin focusing more on the 4th Wednesday. So if we look at these, the 1st and 3rd Wednesday, both Jory and Jackie talked about those. These are critical days. When you look at, for example, on 12/19, that would be one of the 3rd Wednesday of this month. Intervention, team process time, common assessment rubrics. All of our schools have built-in intervention times. At the middle school, we call it TI, tiered intervention. And in order to target interventions with the kids, we need to know what kids need what interventions. And that's why these Wednesdays, these 1st and 3rd Wednesdays are so crucial. This is where we look at MAP scores, where we look at Explore test scores, where we look, once we develop our common assessments and different grade levels, different subjects are at different stages in that process. That's where we begin to look at all this information and start to analyze all the information. And I agree with Jackie that we do need more support with this. We do need more training. The amount of data out there is staggering. And to make sense of all this data is hard. But once we can start to really make good sense of it, we can really meet the needs of the individual students. We can start to take a look at what skills. And that's where standards-based grading is awesome as well, because we can really focus on individual skills for individual students, and we can really meet their needs. So those 1st and 3rd Wednesdays are crucial. The 2nd Wednesdays of each month, those are basically designed by the building administrators. And typically what happens with that is we're still striving to meet these goals, and we're also striving to meet the building goals. For example, in the middle school, we'll work on PBIS. We will work on literacy. Mr. Goodell, the principal, has us working in committees, and those committees are working on things like grading, working on building safety. We have a literacy committee. We have a 21st century learning skills committee. So all that, even on the 2nd Wednesday, is all geared towards those prioritized initiatives that Jackie was talking about. And then we come to the 4th Wednesday, and sometimes we have a 5th Wednesday as well. And these are designed to work on cohorts, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. It also gives us time to, what Jackie alluded to, meet not necessarily in our little silos, but meet with lots of different teachers. For example, as a middle school science teacher, I'm currently my 18th year here. For the first probably 5-6 years, I heard there was a high school science department. I heard there were some teachers teaching it, but I never met them. We never met as a group. And the 4 or 5 years after that, we might have met once. Now, we've met with the high school probably 3 to 4 times in the last year and a half. And with all the changes that are going on, with the next generation science standards coming out, it's been a blessing to be able to meet not just 6, 7, 8, but 6 through 12. And we've also been making some headway. I think one time last year we actually met K-12 as a science department, people that teach science. And that's where these Wednesdays are so crucial, and that's why these Wednesdays, they make a lot of sense, and they really help us out as teachers to figure out what's going on and to move forward.
Ron, again, I know we're going to get the end here, but when we get to the science standards, and again, the importance of having this professional development time, if you did not have that time, do you think we would have a chance in meeting those new standards?
I think we would have a chance meeting the standards. It would be much more difficult.
Yes.
But what we would probably end up doing is the middle school would be putting those standards into practice at the middle school.
Mm-hmm.
The elementary schools would be putting that practice, and then the high school would be putting those standards into practice, and there wouldn't be that collaboration.
Everybody's doing their own thing. Every
And
group
in the
is
past,
doing their own
it
thing.
was more that way, but now we can meet and collaborate overall.
Okay, great.
As an 8th grade science teacher, I don't necessarily mind looking at 8th grade data, but I really like looking at 9th grade data and 10th grade data, because we take the WKC, for example, in early November. Well, that's the very beginning of the 8th grade year. Where I like to look at the high school data. What do they need? What do they need for earth science? What do they need for environmental science? So, collaborating overall is really going to help us meet those standards much, much more quickly than if we were working in isolation.
Okay, great.
Okay, and just let you know that this plan is found online. If you go to the district's website, it's all on there, so anybody from the community can look at it well. And we want to put it out there. We want people to know that these Wednesdays are important. But as Dr. Wisenthaler was talking about, we're really going to focus on that 4th Wednesday right now.
So that was all just an introduction to why we're really here, which is the 4th Wednesday of the month, which has become a buffet cohort session. And we're really going to just focus on the cohorts this evening. The purpose of our cohorts, we determined, was focus on differentiation and inclusive practices. That can kind of be an umbrella for meeting the needs of literacy, assessment, grading. So we really want to focus on that differentiation piece. It's intended to be sustained over time. So these cohorts will continue. What happened was teachers signed up this year on a Google Doc, wrote out the description of the cohorts, who was leading the cohorts, and then all teachers had to sign up for one of those cohorts. We are meeting 3 times this year. We've already met 1 time, so we have 2 more sessions for this school year. And these cohorts will continue. Now the teachers will get to choose another cohort next year. So they'll do 1 cohort this school year. The next school year they'll choose another cohort and do 3 sessions. And then the following school year they'll sign up for another cohort and do 3 sessions. So they are getting 9 sessions of professional development in 3 different areas. And so I think that that is really going to be beneficial for the district. So teachers, it'll remain the same cohorts for the 3 years. The descriptions of the cohorts will remain the same, but the teachers can choose a different cohort each year. I hope that was understandable, comprehensive, I'm not sure. And really what we're trying to do is just build capacity of our teachers. We have a gifted and talented, a real focus on gifted and talented, meeting the needs of our gifted and talented students, and we have a very large cohort of teachers working with the gifted and talented, I think friends from Wanakee, correct? And then that will continue next year. So we're training more and more people to have the capacity to teach students that need differentiation, and that's just so important in today's classroom. And really we're trying to create a deeper understanding, not just at the surface level, oh, here's a little bit of this, and 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 go on your way. We really want teachers to have a good understanding so we can go back and do a really great job in the classroom working with students. And I think I mentioned this, they just were able to choose on a Google Doc, and it was in real time, so you could see who was signing up. And I think it worked pretty slick. I think everybody got signed up, and if they didn't, you might have had a few extra people show up at your door, and that was great. But they've, so far, after our first meeting, it was very, very successful. Interesting.
So one of the things that we know about students and about learning is that choice is a huge motivator. And we kind of talked about that in our group and in our ongoing discussions, and really wanted to make some choices available to teachers based on what they need or what if they wanted to pursue, and also get their input as much as possible. So again, this doesn't feel like another thing that they have to do, but it feels like an opportunity to really grow as an educator in the lives of their students. So we really were excited to be able to offer the choices. I think you have in your packet a handout that briefly describes the choices that teachers were given. The title is November 28, 2012 Professional Development Cohorts. Does anybody still need one?
No, they all.
Okay. So this kind of outlines what the offerings were based on, again, our discussions, what teachers were telling us they wanted to pursue or what they needed, and our analysis of data. So we had a group that was focused upon gifted and talented instructional strategies, and we had the Waunakee Pathway coordinators facilitating that one, and 37 teachers or participants from our district attended that one. And then we had one called Building Academic Language. That one was facilitated by Emily Arenzi, one of our ESL teachers. She had 14 participants. Literacy across the content areas was facilitated by myself and Michelle Bradley. We had 33 participants. We had to walk in at the last minute. And then we had a writer's workshop offering, which was facilitated by Angie Montpass. She had 31 participants. And another really important topic as we move on into our century here and with all of the technology and the ways that kids are interacting is culturally responsive practices. And that was facilitated by Jory, Melanie Hill, and Teresa Lean. They had 23 participants. More than that. They had some walk-ins too. The next one that's outlined on your document is co-teaching practices for effective inclusion, and that was facilitated by Dr. Amy Stevens Griffith. 41 participants attended that one. Vocabulary and student engagement strategies was facilitated by Sue Paulson and Christy Heitman, and they had 48 participants. We have vocabulary as a SMART goal in many of our district buildings right now, so lots of teachers were very excited for that one. Are there any questions about the offerings? Go ahead.
Just consistent with our processes, I'm going to make an assumption that as a part of this you got participant feedback, assessments.
It's a great segue into their next
Yes, it
topic.
is.
Yeah, they're going to share some of that feedback with you.
Yep.
I said I was making the assumption.
All right, moving on along.
Yep, moving on to the feedback.
We actually then, after our cohort, we sent out a Google
Was I good as a
Doc.
plant?
A Google Docs survey to all of our participants, and they had to.
Mr. Walvogel, Ms. Hanson to Student Services, please. Andy Walvogel, Melissa Hanson to Student Services.
And they had to kind of rate, 1 to 5, how they felt if the cohort, was something that they thought was useful to them in their position, and then if they learned anything, and then just to give us some feedback about what they'd like to see in the next session, if they had something that they thought we didn't cover. All of our feedback was very, very positive, and even a person who said it didn't really relate to their position, which I would argue with, but they didn't give any negative.
They're simply not aware.
They didn't give any negative feedback, so everything was extremely positive. And when we talk about culturally responsive practices, without going into too much about what our cohort, the meat of our cohort, we were talking about how everyone has a culture. I'm part of the teaching culture. I'm part of a mom culture. And so, and that was kind of eye-opening, I think, to a lot of people. I had someone come up after the presentation she said, oh, I signed up for this because I thought it'd be easy. I've traveled the world, and she's like, I never thought that I had a culture, and I never thought about where my kids were coming from, you know, single parent culture, socioeconomic culture. I mean, there's so many different things that we deal with and so many cultures that we work with every day. So that was really positive for me to think, wow, we made an impact here. And really everything was just, people were really excited. They said they can't wait for the next one. I was shocked, and you know, it felt really good to have that kind of feedback. And there's a website and a group called Create Wisconsin, and CREATE, all capitals. And if you want to Google them, I didn't bring anything with me. But we are using a lot of information from those resources, and I just went to a conference a couple weeks ago on a Friday, and met with one of their leaders and got some more information that we're going to use at our next cohort. It's a phenomenal resource right here in Wisconsin, and we can really benefit from it because they're seeing, not just in Baraboo, but all over the state, that being culturally aware and understanding not just ethnic cultures, but cultures of people is really important. So.
Did you want to ask a question?
I want to just make a comment. I think that as we differentiate, what we're doing here is looking at all of the various differences. I know we do this as our profession. We also bring everybody back to the whole. Mm-hmm. So even though we may have different orientations, different cultures, different perspectives, we are still a community, a single community. And I think it's very important that we remember that as we honor the differences, we also honor the wholeness, because that's the only way I think we'll really be successful.
Well, the only way I could describe the session was messy. I mean, we got in some really interesting conversations with each other about different groups of kids, and I said, culture is not easy. This is going to be a messy conversation, and something that I wanted to bring up that we utilize, it's called Today's Meet, and everyone is able, it's on the computer. We all sign in, and they could use a pseudonym, didn't have to be who they were. And when we would ask a question, they could type in response, and then that would be up on the smartboard. Then we could all see it, but we didn't know who wrote it. And so then that brought up other issues. Oh, okay, someone's having a question about this, or this is a really great, you know, definition for ethnicity. Let's add that information in there. Today's Meet made it so it felt more anonymous. If you had something to share, it's not like, Dr. Ritzenthaler, really? That's how you feel about that group of people? Come on. You know, we didn't.
I wasn't in that group.
No, Mr. Ritzenthaler, but I think it made people feel more comfortable, and we really tried to build that trust because it's not an easy topic. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the show The Office, but we started off with an Office clip where they had different ethnicities on their forehead, and they were just being so stereotypical, and I'm like, no one can be as bad as this. You know, we are not going to be this bad. So we tried to start it off with some humor because we got into some interesting discussions, but how awesome. It was great. And when would you normally have those? So it was really valuable.
I was facilitating the literacy across the content areas cohort. We had 33 participants, and we really tried at the beginning to put in some little pieces of formative assessment so we could see where everyone was in terms of their background knowledge regarding disciplinary literacy and what they wanted to get out of the session. So we did things like little polls to see how they really wanted to spend the time together, which was very helpful to us during the session. We also offered some strategies for incorporating literacy in the different content areas and some background information about disciplinary literacy. which really included getting teachers who taught the same content area or grade level together to talk about what literacy looks like in that area. For instance, if you are a science teacher, what is reading like in science? What does it take to read like a scientist? What does it take to write like a scientist? How would a scientist research something, and how would that be different than perhaps a mathematician might do research? So we really tried to start there with having teachers brainstorm ideas about literacy in their content area so that we could kind of use that as a starting point for what we wanted to accomplish in our cohort. Some books are coming around. We also wanted to really center everything around a professional resource. And as we were planning and talking with different groups, it became very evident that when you have 33 teachers, and there were administrators there also, K through 12, there's probably not one book that's going to meet the needs of everybody in that room. So we offered several different titles that would fit under the umbrella of literacy in the content areas, and did some things like book passes so teachers could take a look at them and choose one that they wanted to kind of dive into between now and the next session. The other hope was that they would pick a few strategies from the book and try them out in the classroom so that when we come back together, they could talk about how they worked. So that was kind of the goal, or a couple of goals that we came away from. We do not have all of our data back yet from our evaluation, but I can't wait. So of course, when I see someone, I just ask them. And we've gotten some positive feedback, or I've gotten some verbal positive feedback about having the time to actually talk with other teachers, as Brian talked about, of the same discipline, and really have some resources to look at, to see what the best practices are and what all the experts in these areas are saying about how to best reach kids and improve their literacy skills. So that's kind of where we started. There were some great discussions going on, and it was funny towards the end because I was rushing people because we were trying to get to the end, and when we did the book pass, they just did not want to be stopped. Like, they wanted to read the book right then and there. So that was interesting to see and exciting to see, and everybody walked away with a book and some plans for how they wanted to approach it in their group and what they might like to try and come back and talk about.
Well, and these individuals talked about building capacity in our classrooms with teachers, and you can see here that we're building capacity with leadership across the district, with the leadership that there's just an example of here before you tonight in facilitating some of this really high quality professional development for our staff. So thank you very much for coming tonight, all three of you.
Thank
Brings us to the portion of the agenda entitled Reports, and first up is the legislative update from the WASB conference from Mr. Meering.
Yes, both myself and Mo went attendance to the Legislative Advocacy Conference on November 10th. I just want to include just a few comments from there. It's interesting, we were led originally by State Senator Mike Ellis. He's kind of been known as the Dean of Senate Republicans. He expressed concerns about the voucher expansion. He attended a Catholic grade school, but said his father's voucher program was working a part-time job to send him to a private school, and so he doesn't expect the state to pay for a private education. Schultz also warned about, Dale Schultz warned about voucher expansion, and Tim Cullen did. He said he opposed voucher expansion, arguing that it would be devastating to low property value school districts. So there is some talk about that maybe occurring, but hopefully the calmer heads will prevail. The other person that was there that attended, there were quite a few sessions, but another one that talked was Todd Berry, who's the president of the nonpartisan Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance. He says the thing that focuses on revenue limits, he's not hoping for really big policy changes. So the problem is the legislature thinks in terms of months or a year down the road, making long-term solutions problematic. Hopefully our legislature and governor will think long-term and things that will be positive for our public school education. Otherwise, the only thing else much that I want to talk about, we will have a resolution later on about our fair funding formula, which the Department of Public Instruction gave a presentation on. And Mo attended too. Do you have anything you would like to input on the session?
Well, certainly for a new board member, just the opportunity to sit at tables and talk with board members from across the state, whether they're, with various levels of experience in various size districts, that was helpful for me. But it was certainly enlightening to understand, that our legislators, in fact, are interested in school reform and in bringing good school policy to the state, in spite of maybe how some of those votes then turn out. I thought Todd Berry's comment that we don't seem to, in his opinion, and of course it's political to a certain extent, but we don't have the capacity in our state legislators that we had 20 or 30 years ago, is unfortunate. But I guess that's up to us to make sure that people we elect are informed and aware, kept aware.
Okay, thank you for the update. Thanks to the two of you for attending. Brings us to the facility phase 2 update. There's a couple things that are going on, and I'm going to hand out an agenda, which is going to be for the core planning team's meeting. I think I've got enough in there. That's going to be on Wednesday. So while we have that core planning team meeting set for Wednesday, we also have, just to give you an update, again, what the phase 2 is focusing on the district's vision for the facilities, prioritizing identified needs, both immediate and those that are long-term, and then exploring options to address them. So while we have our first core planning team meeting set for Wednesday, we also sent out a request for a proposal for a construction management service, and that proposal went out on the 29th. Those interested met in the district on Friday the 5th, and do we know how many were here?
4 out of the 7.
Okay, so 4 of the 7 invited, took the day to come to Baraboo to go through our facilities. Their proposals are due back on Monday the 17th of December, and we will then get together and look at hopefully the 4 and come back to the board on Monday, January the 7th, which is going to be a special board meeting, which we can hopefully have them come and present to us and pick. Again, I want to make sure that the board is engaged in the process. Sean and I are more than willing to do our part as reps from the board and report back to the board. I'm trying to keep communications to the board steady. I think we will certainly have once a month, maybe even twice a month, we'll have an update on the agenda as to where we're at. But thus far into the process, does anybody have any questions, anything that we need to get answers for you? Certainly after the first meeting, we'll come back and have a report as to where we got for the first meeting, which is Wednesday.
So you will have a report at our next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a meeting then January 7th. I just want to confirm that. Okay.
Are these open to the public? Board members?
Did you have any particular question on anything that's on the agenda? Or if you come up with anything, just please let me know. Okay. Sean, did you want to add anything in regards to an update? I think that's about it for now. So then we can move along to personnel recommendations, which I'm not aware of any that we have. So we can pass over that. Brings us to new business, which is the request for the approval of exception to the open enrollment application period. You were provided a little background. Martha, I believe you were the one that
No, we don't, this is a normal agenda item that we have. We don't only have a standing item on our agendas because typically the board's acted on requests that we've been steadily receiving for either open enrollment in or open enrollment out. A difference is Danny's not here tonight, but she attended a DPI workshop, and at that workshop, one of the suggestions that they made to districts is that the board authorize the district administrator to approve those exceptions as they occur throughout the year. Because obviously when they come before the board, you have no legal stance to deny those once they follow those 7 exceptions that are now allowable under the new legislation. And what it does, depending on the time period of the board and when the board meets, it can delay their enrollment either in the district out or the district in. So that was the suggestion that Danny had, that the board authorized me to approve those. We could still come forward as an FYI to the board and give regular updates about the open enrollment in and out. But because of the new legislation, we're going to be seeing this as an ongoing thing in our district.
I would like to make that as a motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Vidro, seconded by Cummings to authorize the district administrator to approve exceptions to the open enrollment application period and then report back to the board.
And just for clarity's sake, this is purely a systems process, bureaucratic process. The board really makes no decision about whether to approve or not approve because it's in the statutes that...
It's in the statutes. The only reason that we could potentially deny an open enrollment in would be based on the class sizes that the board established back in January, as well as anything under a student expulsion or something like that.
And as district administrator, you would bring to the board your recommendation based on these issues.
Right, and Danny always closely looks at those. She coordinates our open enrollment and checks in with the building principals and reviews the records very carefully before we make that determination.
Any further discussion? Having a motion and a second, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Brings us to the resolution, and I will turn back to you, Mr. Marion.
The resolution, as read, the Baraboo Board of Education resolves that our governor and legislature support and enacts the fair funding for our future plan that has been proposed by the Wisconsin Department of Education for the 2013 and 2015 state budget year. That's my proposal.
You're making that as a motion. Is there a second?
That's my motion.
Second.
Sorry.
Motion by Nearing, seconded by Vidro. Discussion?
I'll just quote Tony Evers, and just to make it brief. He states in his letter when he introduced it, is fair funding for our future reforms. School finance protects taxpayers, addresses significant educational needs, and builds a stronger foundation for our education in Wisconsin. So I believe that it's in our best interest as a school district to advocate for these things. Dan Rossmiller sent me a note today highlighting the fact that he thinks it's a good idea that school districts stand behind the fair funding plan and addresses that to our government and people such as our governor and our legislature.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
I would agree with that, but I would also make a grammatical correction. Enact should not have an S. Support and enact the Fair Funding Act.
I will support that.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I would also agree. I think it's a critical issue that our community needs to be aware of and informed of in great detail. There are a lot of documents that are available. I think a part of our responsibility as a board, and certainly consistent with our strategic plan, is to inform our community of the importance of certain issues that impact them and impact the school. And I would recommend that we also have some kind of a communication process to keep our parents and our community aware of why this board is endorsing this resolution. Not only that it provides additional financial resources to the Baraboo community, but that it ensures the fact that on a statewide basis, there is a fairness and equitableness in the way in which dollars are distributed to school districts throughout the state.
Hearing the motion and being seconded, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Meering, for bringing that to our attention. I would now turn to the Chair of Finance for a recommendation for the copy paper bid award.
Probably the most important bid, right next to the milk contract. We have a provider. We go out for 1,150 cases of paper a year. O'Brien Agency has had that bid for several years now. After opening the bids, they're receiving the bids $26.50 a case. O'Brien is again tied for the low, and the Finance Committee so moves to recommend retaining O'Brien Agency. Second.
Having a motion by McNevin, seconded by Cummings. Any discussion?
I'm assuming they're local?
They're, I think, based in Portage.
Yeah.
And then they deliver as needed. We don't buy 1,100 and get 1,100 cases delivered at once. They deliver to each of our buildings as needed.
It supports our community's economic development.
Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Entertain a motion to
Nope,
adjourn.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
If I could take 1 minute of time of the board to let them, this isn't an agenda item, but this happened with finance tonight.
Okay.
So I want to give the board a quick heads up because you'll be receiving this information. Martha came to me and we took it to finance. She's not a big believer in draining our reserves and our fund balance to do projects. So Martha has taken a look at opportunities that we can utilize to catch up on some of our deferred maintenance projects, so to speak. And she has two projects in mind, or two funding mechanisms in mind. One is we have levy authority this year in the budget of $261,000. It's our last debt payment, but that is our levy authority. And in her discussions with Baird, they said you can take that levy authority, borrow some general obligation bonds, and do about $2.2 million worth of projects. Those would be any kind of projects or priorities that the board would determine. So it's a sizable dollars, and when we're looking at things like middle school walls and things like that, roofs, it gives us an opportunity to start to catch up on some of these projects. The other thing that Martha looked at and brought to the committee was in energy exemption financing. And the state of Wisconsin gives school districts authority to exceed their levy authority if they undertake energy efficiency savings. And what we do is we engage a professional that comes in and not only recommends savings and projects that will save you money, but they guarantee those savings. And with that, we can then go out, borrow some additional dollars, and undertake those projects. There are two funding mechanisms. One does not even increase our levy at all, and the other one is a slight increase but has a guaranteed payback. So those are two ideas that have come out of finance that are going to come to the full board in the next meeting. You'll be getting information ahead of time. I wanted to give you the heads up so that if you've got any questions before next meeting, you certainly can ask myself or Martha.
And remember, the next meeting is next Monday already. The 17th. Unless you want to come on Christmas Eve. Christmas.
If it was important to you, I'd be here.
I won't.
For that update. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Those in favor?